In this video, I want to cover just a few aspects of the two moving average lines we have on the price chart above. We've added these along the way, and remember, our trading strategy is called the RSI 4. And the RSI is the relative strength index down at the bottom here. We basically sell the tops and buy the bottoms. However, before we get into that any deeper, I do use the moving average in a very basic way. Now, we could talk about this very extensively, but let's just talk about it visually, because if you look at this strategy of entry in the Forex market, entering a buy or a sell order, the only real reason I'm using the moving average is to give me just a couple different things called confluence, or things that match, that buy into what the relative strength index is saying. So let's just talk about a couple of them. As we do some live trading and talk more about the trading strategy, I will show you different patterns. However, I want you to be very careful there, and we'll talk about this in another video. Patterns can be a mind virus. The human brain wants the easy way out. So the more you look at this, the more patterns you will see. And I think you have to be careful of that, because you'll get more sucked into the concept of patterns, because that's what your brain wants to do. And you start getting lost in the trees. The woods becomes just one entire meshed up thing. So let's simplify this. And frankly, that's really what you want to do with Forex. Simplify it. And that's what I've done with this strategy. So two things about the moving average. These two lines, the fast line, which is green, meaning it just hugs the price movement closer than the blue line, which is the slower line. So we have a 13 period moving average, which is fast, and a 48 period moving average, which is slow. That's about the extent that you need to know. However, here's the two visual things I look at. Number one, is the moving average lines, do they agree in a uptrend or a downtrend? It's literally giving you just a visual. Right here, take a look at this. This is an obvious downtrend. I want to know that in the back of my mind, and I simply do that visually by glancing at these two moving average lines, the fast and the slow, and how they interact together. Now let's go back in time and look at an uptrend, because here is a downtrend and here is an uptrend. When the price moves up and away from those moving averages, it then went flat for about a day and a half, and then it continued upward. However, this looked for more of a solid uptrend. And here's an example. When the green moving average, which is the fast, crosses up over above the blue, which is the slow moving average, we get an obvious visual. Now, that's about the extent of my using the moving averages. I just like to be able to glance at it and find out, is the price flat? Is it going up? Is it going down? Is it erratic? It's really just a visual. So obviously I use the two moving average lines as a visual as to whether the price is trending up and trending down. And you'll notice once they really separate from each other, you're really in an uptrend or a downtrend when those two lines really separate from each other. The next thing I'm looking for is how close the price is to the moving average lines. What I like to know is when the price, and we can take this particular area as an example, the price really is moving so fast that it's actually moving away from the fast moving average line. And that's a lot of power in the market. And what that means is, and I'm going to introduce you to a word called the pullback. So certainly it starts getting exciting when you think, wow, if I entered a buy down here when the trend was starting to go up and I held on to that buy, boy, I could make a lot of money. However, you'll find a lot of times it's easier to do a transaction, whether it's a buy or sell, in what's called the pullback. Look at this area here, where the green candle finally push, and the market could not sustain that level of price action. And what it did is it pulled right back to the line. I like to purchase a trade, whether it's buy or sell, in those areas. You'll see it talked about in the industry. It's called a pullback strategy. So we're literally waiting in this area. If we got into the trend, great, we got into the trend, and we'll talk about that. But I'm really just talking about using the moving average to visually see if the trend is up or down, or also to see how far away the price gets from that moving average. That means it's going to pull back. And it did in this particular case. Then visually it went sideways and came down. So let's just look at one entry concept here. So obviously I'm looking for this pullback, and we got a signal right here where the price went above the 80-85% range. It actually looks like it's about 87%. If you look over to the right there, and then in one fell swoop, it just came down. That is when you can catch a sell trade. And in this particular case, it moved about 70 to 80 pips or 7,700 points. As we get into the strategy, I'll tell you what the mindset is for how many points or pips you're going to want to try to go for in the market, just to be smart about it. And your brain will want to get into a trade and hold on to it forever. And that's typically, and we'll talk about, it's typically when you're going to lose. But those two things are what I'm using the moving average for. There will be other subtle things. And we've talked about this when I talked about putting the moving averages on the chart. Just the simple fact that the lines cross going upward or cross going downward. I've tried to trade with only moving averages before, and it just doesn't work well. I'll say this once, if I'm going to say it a million times. The number one concept of our trading strategy is to buy the bottoms and sell the tops of the RSI, and then to use a few other things, which we'll talk about in upcoming videos, to build a little confluence or confirmation into what we're thinking. And I'll go ahead and say it again. If you just bought the bottom of the RSI and sold the top of the RSI, you do pretty darn well. When you start to see these extremes, like the price pushing way up in this particular case, and it just touched the 80% line here of the RSI, and then look what it did. It just came down and down and down and down and down. That's 37,000 points it came down. So that's all I'm going to talk about with the moving average. We'll see other little nuances, but that's it. I want to know what the trend looks like. Is it up or down visually? And how far away is the price pulling from the moving average line or lines? Because we're looking for the power of the snap back or the pullback when the price has to pull back to those moving average lines. It's a great, simple, powerful move, and you can make a lot of money in a couple minutes if you call it properly. And the RSI 4 is going to help you do that. So that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next video.